Hey there, dear heart. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome, and welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here. Our weekend journey was really pretty interesting from a number of perspectives. Perspectives that relate to everything that we're doing here on the show. One of the things, did you tell them the height of the waterfall, Jean?
I just said it was the highest one east of the Mississippi, but no, I did not.
Well, it's interesting. It's about 3 times or 4 times as high as Niagara Falls, which I thought was pretty interesting. Although, you know, the falls is this huge river that comes over at once, so it's a whole different animal. But this one was maybe 25 or 30 feet at its widest, and it cascaded down through 4 or 5 different. Wasn't all one fall, but the whole length was.
However, just one of the cascades was 400 feet, and I think Niagara was only like 188 or something like that. So just one of its cascades was over twice that of Niagara Falls. Of course, not as wide.
Right. It was interesting. The minute we arrived, it started raining. The minute we got back down from our walk 2 hours later, the rain stopped. But it was actually kind of interesting to just walk in the rain. It was a nice light rain, and it was quite sweet. But I had a shocker for me, and it was a shocker from building new brain cells. It's not something that I would have never even thought of or considered or seen or understood in the past. But we went into this native species preserve, about 4,000 acres. It crosses the Appalachian Trail, and there's several trails in it. And Trillium, which is just an absolutely beautiful flower, anything from white to pink to purple. And when you got down into the trail, I mean, literally, every direction you looked, there were just hundreds of trilliums coming up out of the grass and the trees. You know, they were spread out. Most of them were some distance apart. A few of them were, you know, close together. But they were just awesomely beautiful, several other kinds of flowers as well. And our interest was in native species because we have this private national park, registered national park in our backyard. It's only small. It's only 25 feet by 100, but we're dedicating to all indigenous species. Actually, we're going to do that with the whole property, ultimately. But when we came out of it, I mean, this was just, you know, we'd driven 5 hours to see it. It was absolutely beautiful. The air was clean. The trail was just amazing. Lots of rocks. And when we came out of it, the shock that I got was that just adjacent to it, actually on the edge of it, perhaps even part of the preserve, if not, it was like, you know, within feet of it, there are homes, beautiful, like $1 million homes. One of them in particular was probably, I don't know, maybe 10,000 square feet of manicured lawn. And it was like, are you kidding me? You tore out that forest, that beautiful meadow, those trilliums, etc. You tore that out to put in a lawn? Surely you jest. And I've done some research on lawns. Actually, if you look up on YouTube, look up a video called Why Lawns Must Die, and take a look at the cost, like millions of gallons of water, millions of pounds of chemical fertilizer, millions of pounds of insecticides. Places in America where there are food deserts, 40 million acres of lawns in America, and kids are starving. And this Lawns Must Die tells the story of the history of lawns and how it was a symbol of wealth, how people in England who had the money to have slaves or peasants work for them. It was a show of wealth to be able to have this finely manicured lawn which some person who was virtually starving took care of for you, but it meant you were wealthy. And they give the evolution of it, the story of how it came to be in America, and how it's, I mean, they're literally cities are threatening to put people in jail if they won't conform to the law's requirements. And for me, I've got a crusade I'm going to go on, and that is we need to eradicate lawns. I mean, we made the choice to do the one piece of this one, just 100 by 25 feet of it, to start with indigenous species. But when you think about how many millions of plants that have put at threat insect species that we rely on, like something like 60% of insect species have disappeared in the last 10 years in America. All these chemicals being sprayed, all these pesticides, all these native species being removed. It's just bizarre and insane to put in this thing that produces nothing but consumes and destroys. Like, I think one of the stats was in a country where people are literally getting ready to fight water wars. It takes something like 90 million gallons of water, these lawns, in shape in people's yards. Like, in what universe does that make sense? Now, of course, we've all, you know, what this for me became a symbol of was this whole story, this whole understanding was something I was totally oblivious to, totally unconscious of, had just been brought up in as part of the brainwash of the culture. Oh, this is just what you do. And of course, how many hours of sweat, blood, and tears, and how many dollars spent on seeds and chemicals and fertilizers and water and lawn mowing. Like, in what universe does it make sense to replace something that is edible, supports the wildlife on the planet, and supports human life? How much sense does it take to eradicate millions of acres of that and put in something that does nothing but create toxicity on the planet and consume resources for no reason whatsoever except for somebody to say, oh, don't I have a nice lawn? And of course, everybody thinks, well, Robert, that's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to have a nice lawn. Well, who says? Why? Uniformity, conformity, brainwash. So anyway, it was really quite an interesting weekend. We did what, probably, Jeanie, 6 or 7 miles of hiking in the 2 different places.
At least.
So if you want, if you like the wildlife, oh yeah, the other thing, we probably saw what, 20 or 30 birders. This, with all this native species, the birds are just all over the place, and so we probably saw 20 or 30 people out there just finding different birds and getting pictures and all that sort of thing. So if you're into anything like that, if you're looking for a place to do an interesting vacation that involves something really natural and beautiful, first week in May, I just happened to run across this just a couple of weeks ago. It's like, oh, there's this preserve in the Trillium. And the Trillium is native to the whole east coast of the United States. And
it is the flower of where you're from.
Yeah, it's the provincial flower of Ontario in Canada. But just amazing, beautiful. And, you can hike for hours, as many or as few as you want. We're planning we talked about perhaps doing a vacation next year and taking the kids and perhaps staying somewhere near this huge waterfall. 16, almost 1,700 feet, Jeanie?
No, it's 1,200.
1,200? Oh, I was thinking it was more than that. And they're just 2 hours apart, so thinking maybe we'll see if we can find a place to bring the kids together and all and go hiking up this waterfall, and then a day trip up to the Thompson Nature Preserve in Falls, what's the name of the town? Falls?
Front Royal.
Front Royal, Virginia. And yes, it was also a shock to see this very, very expensive. It's a fairly high rent area, and this very exclusive, very high cost little store that had all these plants as well as vegetables and such. And the sign was local, and out of probably 50 different species, there was exactly one native species plant on the property, which also ties into the brainwash a few weeks ago. I was talking about how, these things that here are weeds, they're exotics over in Europe and other places where they sell them for a fortune, and the things in Europe and Asia and such that they call weeds there get exported here, and they're exotics and sell for a fortune. So it's just more of this commercial money game that we get brainwashed into, and with no awareness of what we're doing to ourselves. I was thinking about the person who owned this beautiful $1 million house with this beautifully manicured lawn, and what was destroyed. And it's like, here's a person who probably is financially very successful. They think they're very smart and blah, blah, blah. And they have no idea what they've done to their own backyard. Like, no clue. If anybody had a clue, in a million years they wouldn't do it. So anyway, it was an interesting opportunity to do a little forgiveness work and breathe, and build some brain cells for what our objective is. And if you just Google private national parks, you'll see there's a university professor who's we sort of picked up on this from his work, and are looking to create more interest on a global scale. And let's get back to native, because these pollinators, I forget exactly, but there's something like 1,600 different species of bees in America, and none of them are bumblebees. Bumblebees are not native to America. Honeybees are not native to America. But there are thousands of pollinators that, they co-evolved with one plant species. In other words, this particular plant with this particular flower is how this particular pollinator reproduces, creates the next generation, and gets to take care of us with our food. And when that plant goes, that pollinator's gone. Like, who'd ever thunk it? It never occurred to me to even have such awareness. So I'm deeply appreciative of the people who are in this particular field and share with us their expertise and their knowledge. And I'm also very appreciative. Several times it was like, I would love to read the story of some of the people who created this waterfall, or this walk up this waterfall. It's just, boulders with steps put in place, and railings and wooden foundations to walk on. Just otherwise it would have been, our 2-hour walk probably would have taken us 10 hours. But somebody put in just a lot of work. And then in the native species preserve that we were at, a lot of old trees that have felled, and somebody's come along and cut them and kept the trail open. And it's just amazing how we rely on other people and the gifts that other people give us. So definitely inspired a lot of appreciation for me. And besides all that, going out in nature like that is a great way to move out of sympathetic dominance into activating the parasympathetic system of the body, of the nervous system. And so on top of all that, there's this benefit of nature's one of the ways to get this whole system activated. The other way, of course, is it's the system run by love. And when Rachma is active and love comes in, there's actually a nerve. It's called the wandering nerve. The vagus nerve means wandering. And it supplies virtually all of the organs that allow us to thrive, for higher brain function, for digestion, for rest, for blood generation, for elimination, for reproduction. And when love exits the human system, all of those systems shut down. Getting out in nature, and green, and fresh air, is one of the ways to bring that nervous system, that part of the nervous system back online, so that the sympathetic system, while it's on standby, is basically deactivated. The fear, flight, fright, freeze, fawning mode. And that has such an enormous impact on health. In fact, I would venture a guess, there is not one disease that does not involve sympathetic dominance, and the impact that sympathetic dominance has on the body, has on blood circulation, has on inhibiting blood circulation and creating congestion within the structure. So all part of understanding, how this whole energy system works and what our place is in the energy system as human beings, really truly functioning out of a nervous system that is tuned to carry and bring active present love into expression through this form and literally pour that energy out into the world. And it's the hostility and fear-based mind that, programs so much of the world, programs so much of our language. There's an exercise that you may have heard me suggest before. And if you haven't done it, I might suggest you do it. Sit down in front of your TV set with a notebook, a piece of paper, and a pen, and spend no more than 3 minutes on any channel on your TV. Every 3 minutes, flip stations. Flip, 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 flip. Draw a margin about 1 inch wide on the left-hand side of the page and leave the rest of the page open. And as you listen, 3 minutes on each station, put a check mark on the right-hand side of the page, the wide-open page, every time that you hear a word repeated that's based in some form of hostility or fear. And then, on the left-hand side, where you've got that 1 inch margin, put a check mark every time you hear a word that's actually based in love. Like, check it out, try it, test it. And I guarantee you'll fill 10 pages with check marks on the right-hand side before you'll get one column filled. On the left-hand side, what does that mean? It means that a language, a way of speaking, a way of perceiving has taken over the world mind. Go back and you hear this man, Yeshua, 2,000 years ago. He says the power of life and death is in your words. And a word based in hostility or fear sets in motion death, literally. I mean, literally, physiologically. Words based in that regulate the nervous system to the point where it shuts off higher brain function. It shuts off blood flow. It shuts off reproduction. It shuts off elimination. It shuts off blood production. All of the things unnecessary for survival. It just shuts down. And all the things unnecessary for survival are all the things that cause us to thrive. And people think they can live in a world where their language is hostility and fear and curse words at every other turn, and, oh, well, what's that matter? Doesn't mean anything. They can live in that world. And my offering is it's what kills us. And it's just time for us to stop killing ourselves, literally, on the planet. It's time for us to stop killing each other. It's time for us to move out of this hostility and fear-based conversation and move into a conversation that's based in love. Still maintaining the ability to hold those accountable who are playing the game from that other side, from the hostility and fear point base. Doesn't mean you have to become a victim and lay down and let everybody walk all over you and you say nothing. In fact, please be wise and speak always in terms that make sure everybody knows that that hostility or fear-based stuff is not normal for humans. It's destructive to humans. It literally destroys humans and the behaviors that come out of it. You know, if you watch somebody's language, you know exactly where they're going. I can remember the first time I heard a speech presented by a certain American president, and listening to the words, literally this was just like the first time listening to the words, and went, oh, how could anybody possibly support that? So much rage, so much pain, so much trauma. I mean, whew. Bless his heart. Accountability is an important part of the process. And being able to maintain, you know, when they said to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, what's most important in the law? He didn't say, make sure you're along with the right political party. He didn't say, make sure you've got all the money you can spend or more. He didn't say, gather power over others. He said, have Rachma. Rachma, the filter in the frontal lobes of the brain, that is the gateway into which and through which love enters the human form to fuel, fire, and empower every cell in the structure. Unless there are verbal, emotional, and behavior patterns that void the presence of love, and people get lost in an hostility and fear world, and their perceptual constructs coming out of the hostility and fear within them void the possible awareness that there is love in the world. So it's nice to have an awareness growing about all the things that allow our human family to thrive in the world and thrive with each other. That was the other thing that impressed me as we walked yesterday. Yesterday and the day before, we were probably 8 hours overall. Was everybody we met were just sweet, conversational. Hey, how you doing? Human beings are amazing. So thank each and every one of you for being amazing and being part of our day as we work to bring forward these tools that come out of the first century Aramaic language and make them universally available, and all the corollary ideas. You know, who would think that native species plants have to do with survival of human beings? Hey, when the insects go, we're gone. That's it. I know humans don't like insects, but the truth is without them, we're dead. They are part of our planet, and they are what feeds us. Of course, I don't mean eating insects. I mean, without the insects, we wouldn't have the plant varieties that we have. We wouldn't have the plant growth that we do without insects and pollinators. Did you mention the black snake you got the picture of yesterday, Jeanie?
No, I didn't, but I was thinking of that when you were talking about being in sympathetic instead of parasympathetic. I know a lot of people would have been like freaked out, but it's there again, if you're on our Facebook page, there's pictures. There were roots going across the path, and then there was a snake, and the snake looked just like the roots. I said it was hidden in plain sight. And but it was
about 3 feet long.
And yeah, and it was beautiful. And we stopped, and it was just laying there, and gave me time to get my camera out and take its picture. And some other people were coming down the path, and they were like, "Oh, how pretty!" I mean, everybody that saw it was just like, in tune with nature and just how sweet.
And one of the things to know about black snakes is if they're around, there are no rattlesnakes, because the black snakes eat rattlesnakes. But this guy was about 3 feet long and was literally just laying in the path. I was glad Jeanie noticed it. I don't know if I'd have noticed it if I'd been walking in front of her. She was in front and was like, oh, look at this. And it just quietly meandered up the path, but it was probably, an inch in diameter. Absolutely awesome.
And we do have a hand up.
Well, let's say hi.
All right. It is Miss Susan, 610. You're on the air. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, dear heart.
Hello. Welcome, dear hearts, yourselves. We are waking up. It's awfully slow, and you wonder if we're all going to wake up in time. Between walking down Costco aisles and seeing everything in plastic and people buying gigantic amounts of plastic single-use water and all that stuff, to living in neighborhoods where you see these enormous lawns and you know that what's going into them to keep them like that. But things are changing. In fact, even this year, just in our backyard, we've worked out something, so I don't think our neighbor is going to complain. We are mowing a pathway in the backyard, but the rest of it is going wild. And I'm hoping to get a sign that says natural wildlife refuge sanctuary, or whatever it is. I've got a woman on the city council getting information for me and permission. So one little backyard over here.
Cool.
And there's one
awesome.
two blocks away. A person has already done that and gotten the signage and is growing native stuff there.
Well, you might remember...
Okay, go ahead.
Just a thought in that regard, you might remember Carrie Lee, who was in the Codependence Intensive with us. And Carrie works for the state of Illinois. I was talking to her this morning. I sent her a couple of videos about this whole conversation. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that in Illinois there's a lot of native species work being done, and they've actually got a state society of some kind. She's going to send me information about it, where you can, they make a sign that informs people this is a native species, home. We're working on and things you can do that neighbors can do and such. So she's going to send me information. When I get that, I'll send it to you. It's something you join there in Illinois. And I asked, well, can I be an out-of-state member? And she wasn't sure, but she's going to get me some information. I'll make sure to pass it on to you.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks.
And we'll put it on the page on our website on indigenous plants.
Mm. So what I was going to bring up is so far from this that I almost wasn't going to bring it up, because I'm either sick or in a healing crisis. I had the most amazing experience this past week or so. Tim and I are looking into moving into, as I told you, this independent living place. It's not going to be for several years, but it's given me inspiration to go through my old musical works and see what's salvageable and what stinks and I'm going to throw out. I came across an opera I wrote that was actually a parallel fairy tale story, a Brazilian fairy tale called the Yara. I don't know if you've heard of that fairy tale. It's not, I didn't write it.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's about a young man who's engaged to a young woman, but he lives near these dark Brazilian pools, and at night he goes swimming in the pools, and there is a witch, siren-like, very beautiful woman who appears to him at night. And despite the fact that he adores his fiancée, this witch has bewitched him. She sings to him, and if he comes too close to her and gives himself to her in, heart, soul, and body, whatever happens, she kills the young men. And she always does this just before the young men are to be married to their fiancés. So the fiancé learns that this young man has been going swimming there, and she turns pale. She's heard this story. She said, "We're about to be married, and you're going there? You'll die. You cannot go there anymore." And he promised he wouldn't. But he wasn't living with her. He lived in an adjoining town. It was very hot one night. He couldn't sleep. He thought, "I just want to go swimming. I won't pay any attention to this witch." They don't call her a witch. They call her the Yara. It's a Brazilian entity or something. So he goes, and sure enough, he's taken in. But he brings a gun with him. He also brings with him a conch that she has sung into, the fiancé has sung into. She said, "If you happen to go there, try to remember to bring the conch with you and put it to your ear, because my love for you and my song might just save you." Isn't that the most beautiful thing? So he goes, and he goes there with the gun. He sees her. He draws near to her. He can't resist her, but he pulls out the gun. 2 shots. She's, of course, not affected. She's not physical. She's an apparition. Then he remembers the gun. Then he remembers the shell.
The conch shell.
And he holds it to his ear, and suddenly he comes back to himself. And the whole of the dreamlike landscape becomes real again, actuality. His vision becomes clear, and he leaves there for the last time. Well, I was in psychotherapy with a woman 20 years older than I was when I was 40 years old, and she was my Yara. I transferred onto her every wonderful thing, and yet beneath all that, I feared she might just hate me. She wouldn't kill me, but I believed she probably, underneath it all, the truth is she hates me. And this is like the childhood scene, we've been through this so many times. So I found this opera, and the opera was never performed. It was like a journal. It was far too personal, and I thought probably it wasn't very good. But I had put it all on the computer. And the story part, what I do is I had been so smitten with this therapist that I wrote notes verbatim after every single session she and I had. I would write down what she said, what I said, and what is obvious throughout is how desperately I wanted her to love me and how sure I was that she would not. That's my life work right there in a nutshell. So I found that this Yara story was like a parallel, wrong gender, but the point's the same, this Yara story. So I wove them together into this play within an opera. And the play is fabulous, if I do say so myself. I'm not sure about the opera. I think it's too long, much too long. And if I've ever had the time and the intention to print it out and cut it down and rematch the story with the opera, it would be a wonderful project. However, I was just on a tear. This was so exciting to me that I didn't really sleep much. I was working on it for hours. Tim Bingham kept saying, "Can we eat? Let's do something." And I said, "No, I've just got to keep going on this." And now I've totally crashed. I've got headaches. I'm exhausted. I had to teach this morning, and I was dizzy and could hardly do what I was supposed to teach. And I'm just dragging around. So what's going on, Michael, you big wizard?
Well, let me answer your question with some questions.
Okay.
You remember this thing called a healing crisis?
I do remember, and I'm hoping that's what it is.
Right. So when you become symptomatic, you'll remember there are 4 questions you ask yourself. Do you remember what those questions are?
Yeah, are you eating right, doing things? How's your elimination? How's your... and I don't remember them all.
Had you hit a new level of vitality before this set of symptoms struck? There's one of the key ones.
Well, for this
were
project,
you just described being in this really high connected state.
Yeah, I had, I guess.
So
yeah.
So if you really connected with, and it sounds like you connected with an aspect of your former self that was really tuned in to bring this up, and that opened a whole new space of, it sounds like, the word I would put to it maybe was youthfulness for you, which would be vitality. So that would be the number one question. So if you were there, is your structure energetically ready to clean out whatever blocks you from this new vision? That would be my take. And yes, when toxicity is released, it hits the brain goes into brain fog. It can create,
That's what I've got.
What is it on a physical level? It's any kind of physical symptom you've ever had and low energy.
Mm-hmm.
And like the doctor said, have you ever had this before? Yes. Well, you got it again. Have you ever had this before? No. Yeah. Well, you got it now. So
yeah.
Are these symptoms you've been through before? Then your structure's probably doing another level of healing. So that's the first one. What's that new level of vitality look like? You are doing more and more of the right things. Your elimination's working well. Have you found yourself craving? And I wonder if part of the process was the fact that you mentioned this therapist, that at the point where you were working with that therapist, was your quote-unquote infatuation with her a chemical high for you that helped you to hide pain from yourself?
Well, it could be. It became very clear to me. Yeah. Well,
So that's the fourth question is drug.
Yeah. Am I craving sweets, for instance? That's my default. I'm actually not, but I did for a while.
Well, you did that, but also it sounds like your mind went back to the remembrance of, and perhaps the craving for, how can I say it best? The energy that moved in you, that anesthetized you when you thought about working with this person. So that would be the drug. So it sounds like you're passing through the craving for that. The awareness of it came forward, and it's like, oh yeah, that was so nice. And what were you anesthetizing with it? The thought disorders fed to you by your power person. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it. Nobody's ever going to appreciate me that deeply, including myself. That sounds like where your worksheets would be in terms of looking at those 4 questions in your healing crisis. And so does it, I hear this story that you've brought together, and it sounds like you're ready to bring it together on a whole new level, which means you have to go to a whole new level. And it sounds like you're opening a space for that. So I'd be doing worksheets on those memories of, well, she couldn't possibly like me, I don't deserve it, I'm not, whatever those thoughts were, clear those out, and there's your, then in your physiology, you've literally got that new level of, you've raised your physiology to that new level of vitality that you're going to need to rewrite this thing and really make it, make it just click. So I hear you talking about a full healing crisis, full blown. And it sounds like inspiration was one of the things. Say again?
I haven't ever had one like this.
I've had many. I recognize. Been there, done that.
Wow.
And sometimes it takes some time to go, oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, got it. Okay. So now I'm in willingness, and I can move through it a whole lot faster, and I can listen to what I need to do. What do I need? Well, maybe I need to do a 3-day water fast. Maybe I just need to up my fluid intake. Maybe I need to do some fasting. Whatever, that new level of inspiration will guide you as to what you need to do next to move through. But when you let go of toxicity and it hits the brain, that's when the brain becomes faint. In fact, people faint It may involve,
Yeah.
the thought disorders about not being accepted can be such a shock to the system that it puts one into sympathetic dominance, and one of the aspects of sympathetic dominance literally is to faint. That's part of the extreme sympathetic dominance state, is people go into a literal freeze. They talk about someone, there's an interesting thing going on in the culture right now, and unfortunately I haven't heard any of the attorneys talking about it, but they're talking about a particular rape that occurred, or at least ostensibly occurred, and one of the it's been publicized quite a bit, not going into the details of who's involved, but one of the things the opposing attorney has said to this woman as well, why didn't you scream? Somebody who goes into that kind of terror in sympathetic dominance can't scream, can't fight, can't run away, literally, physically can't. And unfortunately, that hasn't been brought into the conversation. I mean, to me, it would have been, we need an expert witness here to talk about what extreme sympathetic dominance and terror looks like. Brain freeze, mouth freeze, body freeze, nothing happens. And that, sadly, is a part of the rape culture that isn't understood in this culture and needs to be understood more, because silence, sadly, has been interpreted by the rapists as consent. And it's anything but consent. It's a stark raving terror. Breathing?
Yeah, I just took a breath now that you mention it.
Yeah. What's happening?
Yeah. It's as if...
Were you ever sexually assaulted?
Yeah.
No?
It would never have
you
occurred to me to scream.
You went silent for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about the fact that I left my therapy sessions with this woman. My reason was, look, as long as I'm coming in here, I'm not going to be able to stop wanting you to love me. I was very open with her. It is embarrassing to read these manuscripts, but it's also the truth. And I just said, this is how it is. And what I've learned is this is how much I wanted my mother to care about me and to treat me right.
Yeah.
This is how much, and I can't even feel that with my mother. It's not there. I get along with my mom. It's no big deal. But you are showing me it's there. And you're showing me
it's under the surface.
There. And
it's there.
It's there. So this is what I learned, and I appreciate it, but I've got to leave. I can't pay $75 a session, which is what it was back then, and that sounds very reasonable now, to keep doing what I'm doing, because I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not strong enough or wise enough to change that. So I left, and I said, does this ever happen with clients? And she said, yeah, in psychotherapy, many times a client just won't resolve the issue, and they'll leave unfinished. And that's how it is. We do our best. She was very good. She was wonderful. She was a wonderful person. Yes.
But she should have. It sounds like she did not recognize what you were going through in your infatuation with her, and that. So, time to, I would say, do some worksheets on that, and then take it to the next level with allowing those. My take would be that with her, it was a reflection of what was still unresolved with Mom.
Yeah, it was. That's a good point, though, Michael. I hadn't thought of that. She didn't know how to get to a different place and take me there, too. I think she was afraid that I was a nutcase. One time I walked to where she lived, which was not far from me. I wanted to see her house. I wanted to know about her life, which is just so typical of little kids, wanting to know what's going on in the bedroom with Dad and Mom. So I walked down the street, and I'm in a panic attack because I know I shouldn't be doing this, and I never looked from left to right. I never saw her house never looked, but I confessed that I had done that, and she was horrified that I had done that. She felt stalked, and I said to her, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. You think I'm crazy. Yeah. Anyway, we didn't get past it. Now you're helping me realize that.
Well, and it sounds like she hadn't resolved her own sexuality. That she hadn't gotten clear on her own relationship issues.
And that never would have occurred to me. She was married, had daughters. That doesn't mean anything. Look at me. I'm married, but I am all over the place, emotionally very gay, I think, part of me. Rest of me straight. Who knows? What a mishmash.
Sounds like a whole new healing crisis, whole new layer of what's ready to heal. And notice what resonated was this whole opera that's about resolving attraction and sexuality via a Brazilian fairy tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's powerful. Breathing with you. What's happening?
Thanks. My mind's all over the place. I'm in the pool. I'm with the siren. I'm out. The conch. I want to remember that the real voice is so much. It's like Luke. I have a report to tell you about Luke.
Yes.
This fits in. My daughter called me and she said, Mom, Luke finally got his driver's license. They had to clear up some legal stuff. He had a court order for his arrest and all this stuff. They cleared it out. They got him a jalopy, an old car, and he calls it, his friends call it the miracle car, because what does he use it for? He's driving alcoholics to meetings.
To meetings. That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
It's like, what a turnout in a year.
I know.
Thank you, Orb.
I know, but the thing is, one day the speaker at one of his meetings couldn't come at the last minute, and he called Luke and he said, "You be the speaker." Lukey gets up. Sorry, I'm having trouble not crying about it, but
go for it. Breathe and be with it. Let it come.
Lukey gets up and tells his story, all the way from the beginning. Dad's stuff, the abuse, the alcohol, all the way through. And he said there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and one man got up fairly early in the talk and left, waited outside, came in, eyes looking like omelets, because he had just completely lost it. He said, "You were telling my story." Yeah.
It's too common a story.
It's a very common story. So he's just his whole vocation he's doing brilliantly in school too. He gave my daughter a paper he had written. He said, "Just check this over. I might need a copy edit." She read it and said, "Luke, this is brilliant. Out of the sight. Wonderful." He's very, very smart. So he's really, really doing it. And if he can do that,
that's awesome.
With his father, whose attention he desperately, desperately wanted, and his approval that he wanted so much. I remember him emulating him. Everything his father did, he would copy it. He wanted his father's love, and his father just would turn on him in the most unpredictable times. And he's doing it. So I better get to work. Yeah. Luke, being retroactive now.
Cool.
Michael, you've got to stop saying anesthetize. It's not the right word. Snobs like me are going to say, doesn't that guy know his English? You've got to say anesthetize. There's a T in there. I know I've really gotten out of order here.
No, it's not out of order. Anesthetize. Okay, well, I'll look it up. Thank you.
You did before, and you corrected yourself, and you said thanks, but then you forgot it. Anyway, if that's my only complaint, you're in good shape.
Hey, I've got it made. Yep. Well, I'm just the whole the gestalt of what you've just done with us today is monumental, including Luke. And where Luke was a year ago, and I hold the space that this healing that you've been doing that's extended to Luke will take things, the whole energy of healing, to another level where Jacob can also look into it, and it gets that much easier for Jacob to walk through what he needs to
I
walk
hope
through.
so. I hope so. We're counting on it. It's true. We're going to see him soon. We're all going down there in 18th of May to go to Max, the youngest boy's graduation. And Jacob is slated to go, and he has threatened to be a chaos creator. He's going to be tested for drugs every day that he's there, and he's very angry about that. And I told him, what's the deal? What?
So my offering would be, might be really helpful to offer to him. So notice you've got another excuse to be angry, and you think it's about being tested. Jake, you're not angry because you're being tested. You're angry because you're angry. And it's time to own it and grow up and be finished with anger, because it makes us all stupid.
That's great. I love it. It doesn't make us totally.
You might give him. He's got enough respect for science, perhaps. Give him Albert Einstein's quote on anger: "Anger only exists in the bosom of fools."
That's great.
So maybe this is the space in which Jacob will get the opening to go to the next level and deal with that vicious side of his mind.
Yeah.
Reflective of the generational patterns of viciousness from his power person.
Oh, no kidding. Exactly. Yeah. But you helped me realize, too, that Luke's work has taken him beyond what I had been able to do with that therapist of mine. And the fact that he's doing it means I can do it. And I've got to do it.
Absolutely. He sounds like he's perhaps found himself in a vocation, or at least an avocation, if not a full-blown vocation. That's awesome.
I know. Mm-hmm.
Very sweet. That's just delicious, or as Ari would say, delicious good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for listening to all that.
Well, I suspect you've opened this space for many people today. So
maybe my energy's coming back. Yeah. Yay. Thank you.
Well, remember the Course talks about willingness. Willingness is the cosmic grease. The person who's unwilling, who goes into a healing crisis, can literally be in that pain, in that trauma, in that weakness for months or even years if they're an unwillingness.
Oh. Wow.
And the minute one softens, breathes, and goes into willingness, something I don't remember whether I've shared this on the show, but recently I was doing some breath work, and what I saw, the breath, of course, has been an important part of my work for decades, but what I came to understand, what I was shown, was that the breath, and this ties in with the whole idea of Ruka Dekuch, the Aramaic she who undoes the effects of our ears and teaches us the truth. The breath literally delivers love to the cell. how the love gets transported. You know, it's like the blood carries oxygen, nutrition. The breath carries love to the cell, and that's what's required for healing of the cell. So joining you in that full breath, and that full breath, you know, Jeanie sometimes talks about my Darth Vader breath, but that's actually one of the ways of getting into parasympathetic mode, is with that type of breath. So carry forward.
I thought parasympathetic was when you were, sympathetic dominance is when, I have to translate when you
sympathetic
use
is the fear, flight, fright. Parasympathetic, that's one of the ways, is the Darth Vader breath. Is one of the ways of going into parasympathetic mode.
Okay, got it. Good. All right.
Sweet. Well, holding space for this wedding coming up, or this graduation, that's awesome.
Thanks. I'll give you a report.
All right.
For sure.
You have a blessed one.
All right.
Yay.
Thanks.
Yay. Sweet. All right. Well, lots of love and blessings. Appreciate you. Everybody, create the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world. You're empowered to give it. The world needs it. Thanks for being with us.